Good evening everyone, welcome to this Cabinet meeting and thank you all for being here. We're on item 1, apologies for absence. We have apologies for Councillor Martin Welton. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. We're now on item 3, that's the minutes of the last meeting we held on the 14th of January 2019. They're on your agenda papers, are they agreed? Thank you very much. We move on to item 4, that's the reference from the Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny panel regarding the second round of budget scrutiny. I understand Councillor Peter Southgate would like to say a few words if you want to come up and take your seat, Peter, and I'll call you in when it comes to you. So we turn to Councillor Mark Allison.
Would be okay to respond rather than introduce.
Peter, do you want to use up your 3 minutes?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to feedback from the Commission, which in turn receives the feedback from the various panels. This is on page 8 of your agenda. We started by noting that our problem is not unique to Merton, indeed urging you, Cabinet, to join with the LGA and indeed London councils in lobbying central government for a thorough spending review to put our finances in local government on a more sustainable footing. I think a government that seeks to prescribe the exact shade of wheelie bin lids throughout the length and breadth of the land, but does not focus on the acute problems posed by adult care and other matters, has got its priorities in the wrong order. A couple of specific savings proposals that concerned us. One, to in effect charge rent to MBSC and the CAB for the premises they occupy. On the face of it, not unreasonable, but we were concerned that the ramifications of that for all of the small voluntary sector bodies that in effect the MBSC sort of acts as an umbrella had perhaps not been thought through, and that there could be consequential losses to the services they provide. The second one, the proposal to in effect close Morden Park House and relocate staff back here to the Civic Centre to save some 78,000. Bearing in mind the money that we've been paying out to secure the Merton active site, over 300,000 a year, and that the option that you took there to demolish is not open here, as this is a Grade 2 listed building. We query really whether the cost of mothballing could well be far greater than the saving from relocating staff. And the final point, we'd like to spend some time actually looking in more detail at the funding of the capital programme, and the Financial Monitoring Task Group may well take that on. I think we're conscious there that even as the level of capital spend flattens out, the cost of supporting that through the revenue budget actually seems to go on rising into some 12 million a year, I think, by the end of this 4-year medium-term financial strategy. So it's a big number that needs keeping under close review. And if I can just end by thanking Councillor Allison for his attendance at the many scrutiny meetings, but in particular my thanks to Caroline Holland for so patiently answering the many questions that we raised through those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the work that you do as well. Councillor Mark Allison.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I should probably start by echoing those thanks, not just to Caroline, but she's got a very hard-working team who've been working extremely long and hard on a very difficult budget for us this year, with so much needing to be saved to reflect the levels of cuts that the government have made to local government since 2010, really reaching a head this year. Caroline and all the directors and all the people who attended those meetings from the officer side did a very sterling job in listening to members' concerns, responding, and helping members to have a greater feel for the reasoning behind some of the suggestions that have been made. I'd also like to thank all of the many members who put in a great deal of time and effort and thought through the scrutiny process. For very large parts of all of the meetings, 4 meetings in the autumn and 4 just in January. Both myself and Councillor Southgate were largely silent, and so we got a good chance to observe councillors at their best. It is a difficult time for local government all over the country. Lots of places are seeing children's centres, libraries, leisure centres, all under threat, amongst many other services that are less prominent that help individual people with adult social care needs and with children who are vulnerable and so on. I think that we've got a reasonable approach here that protects the vulnerable, and we've gone about things in the right way. We've needed to make savings of around about up to £20 million over the course of the 4-year period, and I've identified about £10 million in this budget round that we're intending to bring to later in this meeting, and then go on to council next year. But I would like to refer to the 3 suggestions really that the Scrutiny Commission had for us. First of all, so it kind of like almost in reverse, well, not in reverse order, but like in the order, starting with the capital budget. I perfectly see that there's a need to constantly review the capital expenditure budget. There's a problem that we have almost every year that we set a target for capital expenditure. Capital projects are put into the budget for very understandable reasons, to either improve services or help to make savings, or to improve the local area. But for capacity reasons, and probably due even more because of the reductions in the budgets of the council, for capacity reasons, we don't always spend that money, or we almost never spend the capital budget in the year in which it's put, and quite often have to push things back into future years. However, all I would say is we do constantly review it, and every single time it's reviewed and every time it comes to scrutiny, there is never one item on the capital budget that anybody says, I want this item to be deferred. That is, like, if you like, the challenge for scrutiny and ourselves. Actually, when we look at the capital budget, everything that's in that capital budget is desirable and we would like to achieve. It's just hard to tell at the start of the year which of those is going to be harder to deliver within the 12 months of that financial year, and which is going to be definitely achievable. If we can make ourselves more, if we can make that more predictable, that would be a good thing, but past experience suggests that that's possibly harder than it may look. So we wish Scrutiny good luck with helping us on that, and we would appreciate it, and that's certainly a saving that we take on board. With regards to the other 2 savings that we've been asked to reconsider, what I would recommend that the Cabinet does is that we agree with Scrutiny to remove both of those from this year's budget. However, with both of them, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be required in future years. The saving for rents for local charities, really there's a good reason that has been brought forward, which is that we want all of our local charities to be on a level playing field, and we want the existing beneficiaries to be able to choose the premises that are best for them rather than over or under occupying council premises. And so we probably do need to get to a point where, rather than a notional rent that's effectively coming by it being free, there's a real rent or a real choice for them to look for somewhere else to live. However, we recognise, live or break from, however, we recognise that, that the saving has been brought forward this year before really detailed discussions have taken place with those charities, and what we'd like to do is to see that those discussions take place over the current year, and if something emerges from it, then it may appear as a saving or is rebudgeted in another way in future years. So that's what we intend to do with that, but it will not be a saving that we're bringing forward this year. On the other one, the future of the registry office, it is perfectly understandable what members said at the commission, that the business case for closure, for effectively moving services somewhere else, was not wholly made, and we recognise that. However, it is very clear that it is a hugely loss-making service, and we will have to look at some way of either increasing the revenue that comes in at the existing registry office, or we'll have to look at whether another use of that site would be better for council taxpayers. At this stage, the Commission is perfectly right, there wasn't a business case that was presented, and there are fears, we don't think it will be the case, that even with 3 years notice, that it might still be empty at that point. And so we'd like to use the next 12 months to have a proper look on a business, on a proper business-like basis at how that venue could operate and provide better value for council taxpayers. And if a good business case is made, then obviously we'll present it and scrutiny will have a chance to look at it. If it's not possible to make a good business case, then obviously things don't go that way. But we feel that there is a very strong chance that the losses that are being made there are very much greater than the income that goes in there at present. So those respond to the three specific points that were raised. We hope that we've been constructive in the way that we respond to each of those. We'd like to thank again everybody for being so constructive and so businesslike in the way that they've analysed the business plan, and I think that with those comments in mind, I'm happy to accept the recommendations of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, and then move on to the business plan itself at the next point in the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. Is the director also saying anything to that?
Not on that. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Peter, for all your work. Can I add my thanks to the scrutiny process here in the London Borough of Merton, to the Chief Exec, to everyone working on scrutiny, to our Democratic Services, our Legal Department, the Finance Department, for the way in which we here in the London Borough of Merton do deal with scrutiny, listen to scrutiny, take account of scrutiny. Any other Cabinet member contributions? Councillor Macaulay.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make a comment as Cabinet member for Community Engagement. I do feel that for many years, it's not a criticism, I think for many years since I've been a councillor in this borough, that MBSC have had a notional rent and CAB for many years, and smaller organisations that I speak to have to rent the Ethnic Minority Centre, and in terms of equality, we as an authority, we've got to look at that next year. So that's the comments which I feel is quite reasonable for me to say tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Draper.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to commend them on point 2, recommendation that a cross-party recommendation to lobby the government for a sustainable basis. Because I mean, it does kind of blast the myth that the government have increased council spending that we hear about this time of year. And I know nobody believes it, but it would be so much better if we could get past that. So if this was a proper cross-party agreement, then it's really welcome.
Yes, thank you, and I do my best in Leaders Committee, which is the London Councils, and on the LGA, wherever I meet our colleagues there from all parties, to impress upon the government the need to provide a proper sustainable funding for all local authorities. Okay, so we have recommendation 1, which is to take into account the recommendations made by the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, which we are doing tonight. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We move on to items 5A and 5, and I'll hand over to Councillor Mark Allis. Again.
Okay. Thank you, Leader, and thank you to everybody who's been involved in this document. And as you can see from the report, it goes from page 1 to page 378, and I'll start reading from page 1. It really demonstrates that it's a very comprehensive document, that a great deal of work has gone into, and there's a great deal of consideration. These are, as I said, extraordinary times for local councils. Austerity has hit us possibly more than any other service provided, any other public service. And it is a great testimony to all of the staff at Merton Council that we've kept the show on the road and continue to provide such good services for so many people, and particularly that we provided services for our more vulnerable people. The wonderful news about the assessment of our children's services just recently is a prime example of something that we do that maybe isn't that sexy, that doesn't gain a great deal of attention, and yet it is vitally important to the well-being of our most vulnerable people, who will grow up hopefully to be a great asset to the community that they're from in Merton. So we've recommended a great deal of a great number of savings in here. They will be very difficult. We also look at a whole range of things: service plans, the quality impact assessments. A great deal of work is in these papers. And I'd like to thank everybody for their work on the budget and the retail financial strategy going up to 2023. The work that you have done helps to make Merton a good council, and I'm very proud to be part of it. It's my 9th budget process. It's been probably one of the hardest, but we do have a good council. It's been one of the most harmonious processes that we've been through, even though it's actually been extremely hard, and things have been making some very difficult decisions. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Esson. Can I thank you for your hard work on this year's budget? I hand over to Caroline Holland, our Director of Corporate Services. I know she'll have comments on this.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose, as Councillor Ellison has said, it's quite a large report. Quite a lot of it you've seen already in various drafts, and I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the changes or some of the new items which are of particular relevance. So, in response to some of the concerns raised at scrutiny on page 30, we have set out changes to the capital programme in light of, and on the revenue side of things, in light of those changes, which shows that actually there's been a slight reduction in some of the capital costs purely because slippage of some of the main children's schemes into later years. We do also allow for a certain amount of slippage when we look to fund the programme, and that's actually shown on page 42, when you can see, for example, on page 42, partway down for 2019-20, we say slippage carried forward of 14.6 million. So we're looking to fund a lower level of the capital programme based on the previous experiences of what we look to do. I have set out in the report the view on the general fund balances and reserves, so that's set out in 268, which has shown a slight increase or decrease in the level of general fund balances that we say the authority needs to go forward. There is the full reserves table, however, that will be amended before it goes on to council, so there's still some minor adjustments to be made to the papers, but we did miss some of the funding from one of those reserves for capital, so that will be amended before we go on, as I've said, to council, so that's set out on page 316, so the full detail of all of our earmarked reserves and capital receipts and capital balances, all of our usable receipts and balances is set out over the 4 years for you to have a look at. I suppose I wanted to draw your attention to, within the legal implications, to something that's gone in, particularly in Paul's area, so I don't know whether Paul also wants to say something about it, but in considering the budget for 1920 and also the draft equality assessments, just clarify what our responsibilities are, what our duties are, and then how the savings that we are currently bringing forward are in the pack are proposals and can be amended at any time as you go through the process. Not all of these savings will come back to Cabinet for decision, some will be done at a director level, some at a lower level, and that does depend on our scheme delegation, but it's just to draw your attention to that, which is new from what you have previously seen. And then, as we have said, in light of the fact that we're going into a spending review from 2021, we're going into a fair funding review, we have the extension of the business rates pilot, we are currently having a deficit on our dedicated schools grant. Positive assurance statement that I set out on page 276, my view of the budget for 1920, the assumptions and the fact that I believe that the balances that we have are adequate for those purposes, even with that adjustment that we'll be making to the revenue reserve for capital. So that's my personal assurance which I legally have to give on the budget, and I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Clearly we also have the draft resolutions which will be then going on to council for you to approve on the 6th of March. I think that's probably all I want to say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any cabinet member contributions? Okay, thank you. We've all gone through these in various meetings and scrutiny, cabinet meetings, various meetings. A very, very big parcel of work, and I want to thank everyone. We are mindful of the savings proposed information pack which we have with us, and we've taken with us to various panels, and it's with us here today, and we'll need to have it with us on the 6th of March at the Budget Council meeting, and we have item 5 with 9 recommendations as we move. Yes, Caroline.
So I just wanted to confirm. Oops, sorry, thank you. That we have amended the savings for the 2 items that scrutiny put forward, so the total level of savings have actually reduced from that which was presented to you in January. So just to give you that confirmation. Sorry.
No, thank you very much for that confirmation. So we're on item 5. That is the draft business plan 2019 to 23. We have 9 recommendations. Are they agreed? 1 to 9. Agreed. Thank you very much. We now move on to a regular item we have at these cabinet meetings. That's the financial report, and this one is for December 2018. Councillor Mark Allison.
Yeah, thank you again, Leader, and thank you to Roger and everybody who works on the financial report throughout the course of the year. This is a report for the month in December, as I explained, most months the purpose of this is to see how our finances.
Could we hear it through the microphone, please?
Is it working?
No.
He needs to turn this one off.
It's always a great difficulty getting the leader to be quiet and let others have his say. So I should go back to the beginning then. I'd like to thank Roger and his team for the record for all of their work on this, and to explain that the financial reports, this one's for December. The purpose of our monthly monitoring report is to compare where we're actually at with what the budget at the beginning of the year was setting us, to analyse service by service and department by department how we are spending the money. It helps us to look at pressure points. It also helps us to understand if there are some areas where funding is maybe not so needed, and this can help us in future years with the full budget process. It also gives us a bit of rigour and enables us to be more businesslike as a council. As of December 2018, we're actually looking at a modest underspend over the course of the year of around about £1.5 million, £1.49 million, and that's just over 0.25% of the gross budget. So in percentage terms, it's a very small underspend. And I'd like to thank everybody for their hard work and the financial rigour on keeping as far as possible to budget. As we go into the report, we'll see that there are some areas where there is particular pressure on us, and that some of the areas that are underspending, we're not convinced will continue to underspend. In particular, there's a concern that due to government underfunding of children's services, there is, and it's not something that's unique to Merton, it's something that I think most councils across London, if not all councils across London, and most councils across the country are finding, and that is that the government is not funding services for children, particularly our vulnerable people, our vulnerable young people, well enough, and they really need to look into that with a great deal of rigour, and they've failed to do it for many years. But that's the little bit of anger and disappointment out of the way. The pluses and the minuses total £1.49 million at the moment, and we'll continue to monitor this throughout the year until our turn. And I hope everybody can appreciate that it's a really good bit of work that's done by our officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Harrison. I'll turn to Caroline Holland again.
I suppose just to remind councillors that this report will be going on to the Financial Monitoring Task Group at the end of the month. So for some further scrutiny there, and we do have some capital adjustments for you to approve, but also to note that we're bringing forward some capital items of expenditure to take advantage of the half-term and sort of early April, to be able to make sure that we can do some boiler works then as well. So it's just to draw your attention to that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any contributions from Cabinet members on this item? No, thank you. We're on item 6. It's our financial report for the month of December 2018, with good news there, going to the Financial Monitoring Task Forces, and we have recommendations A and B, which are noting recommendations. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We turn to item 7, that's the award of a contract for the provision of extra care and housing related support services at Pantiles House and Trellis House, an ASC contract. Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks Cabinet's approval for the award of the 2 contracts, as you've just mentioned, for extra care services to Trellis House and Pantiles House. The recommendation is to award for an initial 3-year period but that can be increased by 2 further years in 1-year extensions, and it's proposed to delegate that decision to the director and cabinet member. These are services that provide care 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. At present, the council purchases around 43,000 hours per annum across the 2 schemes. That breakdown is at 2.2, and the intention is to procure a similar number of hours with the extension, but also important to note that we only pay for the hours that we subsequently use. In designing the specification, a number of core objectives are set out at 2.3, and that was the basis upon which bids were invited. The price, the hourly price was fixed, so that's at 2.4. So the contract will be the same value for the first year, but it does allow for increases in the national living wage in subsequent years. The process, it's obviously gone through the formal procurement process that's set out on pages 15 and 16. And just note 5.2, the award is proposed to the 2 incumbent providers, so there is no mobilisation period required. Just like to thank all the officers for the work that's gone into this process. I'm very happy to commend the report and the recommendations.
Thank you to Councillor Byers. Hannah Doody, our Director of Adult Social Care, would you like to add anything?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you to you and to all your work, and to Councillor Byers. We're on item 7. We don't need to go to items 8 or 9. That's the exempt papers. I'm sure we've all noted those. They're for information. Cabinet members have read those. So we're on our last item. I'm seeking any cabinet contributions before I close this. Okay, so last item, award of contract for the provision of extra care and housing related support services at Pantiles House and Trellis House ASC contract. We're noting and we're agreeing recommendations A and B. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much.